Hi everybody, I'm Alex. Welcome
And I'm
back.
Sue. Welcome.
Hey, well, we're looking forward to a really fantastic session today. So the last time we met, we talked about the importance of resting the brain, but the brain's only one part of our physiology. And today, Sue's going to talk us through the whole impact of positively exploring our physiology and how it can make a difference to our lives. So when you talk about physiology, Sue, what are you talking about?
Yeah, it's a good question because often when people talk about well-being and anything to do with the body, they're usually talking about exercise or nutrition or something like that. And are we trying to build muscle or lose weight or whatever? I guess I wanted to talk about it more broadly and talk about the topic of what I think of as sort of interoception, sort of the physiological elements, the sensations we experience, and how to actually use our physiology to shift our well-being now and again. And as you said, we are integrated. We are one whole. You can't chop us apart into
Yeah,
bits. We are all
yeah.
interconnected. So for me, physiology is the broader aspect rather than just exercise.
So why does that matter?
Well, I think one of the reasons it matters is because we are this whole, and we know that everything integrates. So your body is constantly sending messages through to your brain. We have a vagus nerve, the 10th cranial nerve, that's connecting all of our major organs. The way that our body sends messages is through all of those sort of nerve channels through our neurobiology all the time. We are getting these messages. So that gives us a clue on how we can actually use our physiology to tap into how we feel. It also gives us a clue of how we can use our physiology to change how we feel potentially.
Mm. And could we potentially be doing the opposite? Could we, if you like, be using our physiology in the wrong way?
Well, yes, we can. And there's interesting research around this over many, many years of how just simple things of how we hold ourselves
Mm.
physiologically can change how we feel. So I often think about, we talked about the brain last time, and I often think about with neural connections, we create habits of how, the thoughts we run down 101 times and it creates these strong neural pathways. It's kind of a bit similar from a physiology, as in if I'm always holding my body in a certain way, it may be sending messages through to my brain that's not helpful. And I'll give you a couple of
Mm.
examples. So imagine I am sitting at my desk and I suddenly notice that my arms are digging into the edge of my desk and I'm hitting my keyboard slightly harder and I'm holding my jaw tense and I'm tense across here.
Mm.
If I am doing that on a regular basis, my body is sending my brain messages saying that you're stressed, you're overwhelmed, you're angry, or
Right.
something along those lines, because the tension in my body can become, just like a neural pathway, something that I resort to frequently. If I give you another example, and one that I really love, is they found through research that television depresses the mood, as in it flattens the mood.
Mhm.
Now, whenever I ask people, what does your body look like when you're watching television? I don't know. For Alex, for you, what does your body usually look like when you're watching telly?
Uh, well, I'm going to make it difficult because it depends on what I'm watching, to be honest with you. But but often it's slouching. Often,
Yeah, this is
yeah,
the thing. If you're watching a movie or your favorite TV show and you're on the sofa,
yeah,
often your feet are up, you're slumped
yeah,
back, etc. Now, if we think about that from an interoception, so interoception means going
yeah.
within, your body is now sending your brain messages that you're lethargic or you're bored or you're tired or
Mhm.
you're drained or you're weary, etc. Now, the funny thing is, and television, I think, has this almost double whammy. Your body is sending you messages that you're lethargic, but your brain is getting stimulated. So
Right.
it's actually really hard to get up from the sofa, which is why we end up binge watching, 10 episodes of something and it's 2 a.m.
Yeah,
before we go to bed.
yeah, yeah.
But I think this is the power of our physiology of the body is constantly sending you messages, and it might be sending you messages that are not helpful depending
Mm.
on how you're holding it.
So would you suggest that it's possible that people are not even aware that they become so accustomed to these messages that they're not aware they're happening?
Look, absolutely. And I spend, as you know, a lot of my time in the emotion space.
Yeah.
And I remember one particular occasion, it's happened more than once, but one particular occasion, I was doing a debrief with a gentleman around his results on a particular emotional intelligence test.
Right.
And every time he touched on anger, his foot would start juddering beneath the table.
Yeah.
And after the third time, I paused him and I said, just out of interest, what do you notice happening in your body right now? He's like, no, nothing, nothing. And I said, well, did you notice basically every time you've touched on anger, you've had this reaction? He's like, I didn't even know I was doing that. So sometimes we don't notice where we're holding tension until it gets released. And I've done this numerous times. I've done exercises with people that they don't even realize they were holding tension because it's become normal to us. But what we need to understand is wherever we're holding that tension or whatever our body is doing, it's sending messages through to our brain to tell us how we feel. So if you are perpetually in a particular physiological state, you might not even notice because it's become normal to you. It's a bit like anybody who's been in pain for a period of time due to whatever reason. If after, I don't know, a particular period, let's say several months, you wake up one morning and that pain's not there, it's like, oh, this is what it's meant to feel like.
Yeah.
Do you know what I
Yes.
mean? It's only when it's
Yes.
gone that you kind of notice you had it before.
Yeah. So what can people do about this? So it's great information, but what can we do?
Yeah, well, I think for me, I like to come back to the science and say, okay, well, what does the science tell us? I'll give you an example. If so, this is tested by people like Antonio Damasio and others, where they've just literally asked people questions while you're sitting still or standing still. And what they're doing is they've put pointed lasers at all parts of your body to see if you actually move. So you're told sit still and just verbally answer the questions. What they've found is little things. Like if I ask you a question about the future, your body will lean forward. You will
Mm.
tell me you haven't moved, but you will pull forward. If I
Right.
ask you a question about your past, you will lean back. If I ask you a question of something that you're proud of, remember those positive moments we
Mm.
mentioned, something where you've been at your
Yeah.
best, you will physically sit taller.
Mm. Wow.
So your body will do this anyway. So one of the things that I love is that all the research tells us that when we feel emotions, our body experiences it in different places. We get sweaty palms, we get prickles on the back of our neck, we get our heart rate go up,
Yeah.
we feel warm across our body when we feel happy, we feel
Yeah.
exhausted and drained when we feel sad, etc. So our body is doing this anyway. What we can learn from it is to pay attention to our physiology. How are you sitting? How are you holding yourself? How are you standing? And again, lots of research will tell you, for instance, if people can see your hips and your shoulders sort of open to them, they will trust you more. But
Mm.
it's not necessarily about that. It's about how are you holding yourself in that moment? Like if you are in a meeting, are you sort of sitting up straight? And actually, it's about you feeling more energized. Whether you get noticed or more or not, the research
Yeah.
tells you you'll get heard more. But actually, you will feel more energized. You will feel more confident. If we go back to Amy Cuddy's research, her and her colleagues did various things about the superhero pose and
Yeah.
how we hold ourselves. But even prior to that, there was some great research on just paying attention to your physiology and sitting up straighter for 2 weeks actually improves your self-regulation.
Wow. That's huge.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Cleaning your teeth with your opposite hand for 2 weeks improves your self-regulation for several months afterwards. And I
Oh.
did actually find that when I broke my shoulder, I'm left-handed. I broke
Yeah.
my shoulder and I had it in a sling for 5 weeks. I didn't eat half as much chocolate.
Brilliant.
So, but again, we don't often know the science behind this whole idea of interoception. And even when we do, sometimes we're not paying attention. We're not noticing. Are we holding tension through our shoulders today? Are we sitting at our desk and holding tension through our hips? Are we slumped in a particular way? Think of somebody who's at a desk and at a keyboard for 8 hours. You start off relatively upright, typing away, and by the end of the day, you're kind of like,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
and it's hardly surprising that we're exhausted, and we're exhausted because we've been working, but also our physiology is sharing that exhaustion with
Yeah.
us.
Yeah.
And I think there's lots to learn from that.
Yeah. I love that idea of brushing your teeth with the opposite hand. As you were saying it, I was thinking about how difficult that actually would be.
Well, and it's funny because it probably doesn't take you long to do something around that. I mean, it didn't take me long to sort of figure it out.
Yeah.
Um, but what's interesting is that they've actually tested this, and I think it's because if you think about your physiology and your brain, one half of your body is controlled by the opposite half of your brain, etc. So if we tend to be dominant and focused on one area, it's also one area of the brain that's consistently in use. Whereas creating that crossover and doing something different is building aspects of the brain as well as changing things in our physiology. But I know myself, like I don't know anybody else, but my nan was absolutely gorgeous. But she would often say, sit up straight, those sorts of things.
Yeah.
And it's kind of nice to know that
Yeah.
actually some of those things of how you hold yourself, when you're presenting, if you've got to do a presentation, if you are standing with your feet directly under your hips, your ankles under your hips, if you're standing strong with your shoulders up and your chin up, you will feel better than if you're sort of wobbling on, one foot with your
Yeah.
legs crossed and sort of hiding yourself away.
Mm.
So it's more about, as I say, your body is constantly sending you messages. What messages do you want it to send you?
Yeah, this is fascinating stuff. So, uh, if I'm interpreting this right, um, what you're saying is that the body can actually influence the way the brain perceives things.
Absolutely.
Like,
So I'll give you my examples. So I love the whole science of physiology. So
yeah,
I've started reading about this probably about 30 years ago, and it's one of my go-to things that I
yeah,
use. So for instance, sometimes I get up, I might go to bed at 9 o'clock, I wake up at 12:30, and I've got a 1 a.m. session for a client in Europe, for instance.
yeah,
I will often be seen doing either 25-star jumps if I'm in a hotel room or
yeah.
rebounding. I've got a little trampoline on the other side of my desk and I'll bounce up and down on my trampoline for a minute
Yeah,
because I know that if I shift my physiology, that when I'm
yeah,
on, I am on. I'm not
yeah,
the sleepy version of me that's just rolled out of bed. I'm the energized version of me.
yeah,
I was in Europe recently and I was working all day with clients for 3 days, but I was also running a midnight session and some 4 a.m. sessions. And the number of times I did 25-star jumps in my hotel room was like
yeah,
probably at least 10 times.
yeah,
But it changes your physiology. It makes you feel better. So that's one of my little go-tos because I want my body to send me a message that I'm feeling better. We can use our breathing for this, of actually just checking our breathing. Is it getting all the way down into our lungs, or because we're slumped over, we can't
yeah,
get the energy through? Or another little thing that I often do if I'm facilitating for like 2 or 3, 4 days straight, if I start to feel my energy dropping, I will flick up my toes. So that's my little trigger in my head. I
yeah,
flick my toes and then I shoot energy straight up my body
yeah,
so that I'm back on. Now, nobody has to know I'm doing it,
yeah.
but it's a way of bringing energy to how I feel. It changes how I feel, but more importantly, it then changes how I show up.
So earlier you mentioned the gentleman who wasn't aware that his feet were reacting
Yeah.
to an emotional experience. So somebody's listening to this, somebody's watching this, and they're thinking, well, how do I know? How could they find out what's actually occurring for them?
Yeah, it's a great question. So, one of the things that I would do, and we're going to come back to what we always say, is we're going to start small.
Yeah,
We're going to start with little things like, I don't know, set an alarm for every 2 hours or something. And when the alarm goes off, just notice, where are you holding tension? How are you sitting? How are you laying? How are you positioning yourself? And see what you notice. Is it restricting any part of you? Is the energy coming down or up, etc.? Start to notice those sorts of things. That will help. You'll start to become aware of any patterns that you have. That would be a little thing for awareness perspective. But the other thing that I'd suggest is, again, give yourself a challenge, a fun little challenge of, for 2 weeks, I am going to notice my body posture and sit myself up straight
yeah,
more. Or I am going to clean my teeth with my opposite hand for
yeah,
a couple of weeks, etc. Try something different. And again, I'll give you an example where physiology, sometimes it happens without us realizing it, but we can do this consciously too. So, about a year or so ago, I was going on a hike in nature, and my lace of my hiking boots got caught in the hook of my opposite hiking boot, and I landed flat on my face. And it wasn't pretty, and I had a yellow face for a while. But I also caught my right wrist when I sort of put my hands down. I caught my left wrist, so I couldn't write
yeah,
for a few days because my wrist was, it wasn't broken, but it was just I couldn't write, I couldn't do anything. And I write a journal every night. And I started trying to write with my right hand. Now, one thing that was, or two things that were interesting. One is, again, try writing with your right hand and see what, or
yeah.
your opposite hand, and see what happens. See how you notice how you feel and what changes. Does it change how you express yourself? The other thing I found is I couldn't write left to right with my right hand. So I wrote mirrored right to left,
Wow,
and I
that's
could write that way.
that's
Now,
incredible.
That was
Mhm.
test it on yourself. It was really weird.
Yeah.
I couldn't write the correct way,
Yeah.
or the correct way for English language.
Yeah.
I was writing backwards and mirrored, and it got really easy with my opposite hand. Now, again, that was just something that happened via accident, but it was really interesting to see how it changed of using my physiology in a different way.
Mm.
So try a micro experiment on yourself.
Yeah.
Test something, do something different. When you walk upstairs, do you always lead with the same foot? Can you try something different
Yeah.
and notice your physiology? But as I say, the thing for me is the small things, noticing how you're holding yourself. Like sometimes I sit at my desk and after a while I'll notice I've sort of crossed my legs and I've twisted, etc. And as soon as I notice that, it's like, okay, back, both feet on the floor,
Yeah.
hips even, spine upright. Let's get back on track.
Yeah. I love this, and I was actually just linking it to something that I got involved in a few years ago, which was a goal-setting kind of process that some people in America had developed. And it was the use of smartphones. But as you set an alarm on a smartphone, you can actually give it a label so you can have a name. And what they did was remind people of their goals frequently throughout the day. So when the alarm went off, it actually said what the goal was. And I was just thinking about exactly that, that you could actually have an
Yeah,
alarm that came up and said, notice your physiology. Uh,
perfect.
and now that for me, that would work incredibly well as a reminder.
Absolutely. And then to your point, if we think about goals, if we want to tap into the use of our physiology, consider how you are setting goals. Do you want to go for a walk when you try and set goals because you're walking forwards?
Mm,
If you are
yeah,
wanting to reflect on what went well today or something like that, do you actually need to sit? Sit on a blanket,
yeah,
sit on the ground, sit on a cushion or something and just be, but
yeah,
using your physiology. Again, sometimes reflective, you might think actually a lower energy could work. So reflecting and sort of laying back and looking up could help.
yeah,
But equally reflecting as in, the thinker pose, or if you like,
yeah.
of bringing
Yeah.
energy down. You can find as you change your physiology, it might change or support how you're thinking or what you're trying to think about as well.
This is massively powerful, I think, for people, because you can default to thinking that this is who you are and this is your condition.
Yeah.
And what you're saying is you can actually change that by the skillful use of your physiology.
You absolutely can, Alex. And one of the things I often do an exercise when I'm in the room with people, where I can help them create an emotion by changing their physiology. And
Mm.
I've even had a situation where I've had two people who've never met, where one person can feel an emotion and the person opposite them exactly replicates their physiology. And they not only know what they're feeling, but they know what they were thinking of. That's how
Wow,
powerful it is.
that's massive, isn't it? Isn't that incredible? Yeah. So you could actually create a situation where a group of people were experiencing a positive emotion through that process.
Absolutely, just by
Yeah.
changing your physiology.
Yeah. Wow. So if you want to say one thing to our audience that you would suggest that they started with tomorrow, what would the one thing be?
Oh, I find it hard to do one because I want to do two. One is pay attention, and the other is
Right.
move it, as
Okay,
in
right.
change it. So if you notice tension,
Yeah,
shift it. If you notice
right.
you're holding yourself, shift it.
Right. Right. So in any way, shape, or form. So
Yeah.
basically you're noticing those two things, yes.
Notice it, move
And
it if
shift
you
it.
need
Yeah,
to. Or
yeah,
if it's
yeah,
serving you, keep it. But
yeah,
otherwise, notice it first and then do something about it.
yeah. What about noticing it in others?
Yeah, well, again, we know that there are things like micro expressions that people's
Right.
face will give them away, but
Yeah.
even body language, like noticing that chap with it with his
Mhm.
foot,
Yeah.
noticing when people sometimes their breathing will change or things like that, you'll notice they're holding an emotion. So I think, and we've talked about this probably a lot of times, is the art of noticing, of being curious, whether it's curious about your own physiology
Yeah.
or if you notice in somebody else, where are they holding it? And again, I'll give you an example if I may. I had a lovely lady who came up to me at the end of a one-day session on positive psychology. And I'd noticed she had literally been sitting up upright at the table all the whole session with her elbows digging in and that
Yeah.
tightness that I mentioned before. And she was frantically writing and all this. And she was
Mhm.
really interested. And then at the end, she came up to me and she said, I need to ask you a question. She said, I don't know why, but I'm just constantly angry.
Oh,
like,
well,
yeah, I
yeah,
can send you that.
yeah. Yes.
And I very politely said to her, I said, thank you so much. I'm happy to explore this. Can I just ask you to do one thing for me first?
Yeah.
Just breathe with me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I helped her just release the tension across her chest and her jaw. And she started to feel calmer. And she was like, oh my goodness, I'd never even noticed that I was
Yeah.
doing it. So notice it in other people and then again, help them shift it if it's going to be serving them better.
Yeah. Yeah, it brings back a memory for myself, Sue. Of I did a very long cycle ride many years ago. I'm probably not capable of doing that again at this point in time, but at the time I was cycling with a guy who was way more proficient cyclist than I'll ever be. He was really quite skilled. And at the end of it, I asked him for some advice. I said, how can I get better? And what I was meaning was, how do I travel faster? How do I create more power? How can I keep going when I don't want to keep going? All those sort of
Yeah.
things. And he said, move more in the saddle. And I thought, what? That doesn't make any sense. I'm still going to be struggling. I'm still going to be exhausted. And I've never thought about it before, but I took his advice and he was right. Uh,
Oh,
and all I did was consciously every 2 or 3 minutes move in the saddle, and all the rest of it flowed.
I
Uh,
love that.
and thinking about it now, listening to you talk today, I think what he was saying was I was tense
Yeah.
in the saddle. And
Mhm.
and obviously that limits the movement, it limits your muscles'
Mhm.
ability to work. But I
Well,
genuinely hadn't thought about that till right now.
no, and what I love there, Alex, is you've that's an example of what we're talking about here is being conscious. It's being
Yes.
conscious and aware of where are you holding things, what's going on, and then
Yeah.
making the choice to shift it. Great example.
Oh, so thank you, Sue. That's been a fantastic session today, and I've learned so much. And things that I had never actually put together are already coming together in my brain. So awesome. And
Thank
I
you.
hope our audience have got something fantastic out of this, and I challenge them to notice and move if they need to. So
Love
thank you,
it.
thank you, Sue.
Thank you. We always have such great conversations.
Exactly, it's fun. Yes.
Thanks, Alex. Thanks, everyone, for listening. See
Cheers,
you.
folks.